Hello and a very warm welcome to the Analyst dated 14th April 2025, brought to you by Vajiram and Ravi. In today's Analyst, we will be analyzing and simplifying 7 current affairs issues which have featured in The Hindu and Indian Express. And the handout of this very discussion is available in the description below for your reference. Coming to the analysis section, firstly we will be analyzing the key provisions of the Waqf Amendment Act and the concerns with regard to the same. Moving on to the second topic, as we are witnessing changes in the caste identities when it comes to India, does this imply that we can eradicate caste system from Indian society? And what step the government needs to take to realize the same? Moving on to the simplified section, we will be covering 5 set of topics and we will also be doing value addition, which would be very relevant for your upcoming prelims examination. So stay tuned. So let's begin with the first topic, which is related to Waqf Amendment Act. This particular topic is relevant from our GS paper 2 perspective. So what has happened? Recently, the President has given the assent to Waqf Amendment Bill. So it has become an act now. In this backdrop, we are witnessing protest in state of West Bengal. And in order to bring law and order situation in control, 17 units of Central Armed Police Forces have been deployed in the Murshidabad district of West Bengal. Now, the first thing that we need to understand with respect to this particular issue is, what is this Waqf? So Waqf basically refers to movable or immovable property which I donate for religious or charitable purposes under the Islamic law. That means movable or immovable property that I donate to Allah. Okay. And the person who used to manage these Waqf property, they are basically referred to be as mutawalis, who are accountable to state Waqf board as well. Now, from where we witness the origin of this concept of Waqf property? So we witness its origin in the time of Delhi Sultanate, wherein Sultan Muizzuddin Sam Gohar dedicated 2 villages in favor of Jama Masjid of Multan, and who was given the responsibility to administer this property. So it was Sheikhul Islam. So after Delhi Sultanate, later on there were different Islamic dynasties which flourished in India, and that led to a considerable increase in Waqf properties when it comes to India. Now, when you talk about the Waqf Act of 1995, there was one issue with this act. Under this act, the Waqf properties were guided by the principle of irrevocability. That means once I have donated my property to Allah, I cannot get that property back. So it was guided by the principle of once a Waqf, always a Waqf property. Then, do we have this Waqf property in other Islamic countries? So the answer is no. If you look at Islamic countries like Turkey, Libya, Egypt, Iraq, they don't have Waqf at all. Okay, what we have in place when it comes to India. And when you look at the property which is being controlled by Waqf board is the second largest landowner in India after your armed forces and the Indian railways. So in this backdrop, it becomes very important to transparently regulate the Waqf properties when it comes to India. Now, what was the issues with the functioning of Waqf board and the previous act of 1995? So first and foremost, as I told you, it was the issue of irrevocability. So under this act, under section 40 of Waqf Act, the Waqf board can declare a piece of land to be as a Waqf property. And since it is guided by principle of irrevocability, so once a Waqf a property, always a Waqf property. This is leading to a lot of legal disputes. By exercising its power under section 40 of the previous act, Waqf board has staked its claim on the Surat Municipal Corporation building. It has staked its claim when it comes to 2 islands in Dwarka. Okay, so this is leading to a lot of legal disputes. Then previously, we had Waqf by user. That means if there is a piece of land, I have not donated this piece of land to Waqf board, but since I have built a masjid on this piece of land and I am allowing the public to come here and offer prayers. For a long period of time, if I allow this thing, so based on the principle of Waqf by user, this property automatically becomes the property of Waqf board. Okay, this was something which was held by the Supreme Court in the famous landmark judgment of Saeed Mehmed Salai Lalabai versus Muhammad Hanifa case 1976. Then another problematic area was if the Waqf board has taken claim or it has declared that this piece of land belongs to Waqf. Okay. So what I can do? I can go to the tribunal which was created under the previous act. But the problem with the functioning of tribunal was the decision of the tribunal was final. That means I cannot challenge the tribunal's judgment in higher courts like High Court and Supreme Court. So direct appeal of tribunal judgment was not allowed. Although the people who are well versed with polity, direct appeal is not allowed, but you can always go to the Supreme Court under different articles, under Article 136, under Article 32, if citing that it is violating my fundamental rights, etc. But direct appeal when it comes to the tribunal judgment was not allowed under the previous act. So this was problematic because there was no judicial oversight. Then when you talk about the previous act, a survey commissioner has to do the survey of Waqf property when it comes to a particular state. But when you talk about the survey work, we are witnessing unsatisfactory progress in this. If you talk about states like Gujarat, Uttarakhand, UP, the survey has not been conducted. And the main reason which the government has pointed is the survey commissioner do not have the requisite expertise which is needed to carry out the survey work. And another issue is there is lack of coordination between the survey commissioner and the revenue department. Okay, so we are not able to come up with the transparent data with regard to Waqf property in a particular state. So this is again problematic. Then it is also against the constitutional principles. Why? When you look at other religions, we don't have any special law to regulate the properties of a particular religion. What we have in place when it comes to the Waqf property. So this is the reason this question have been raised before the Delhi High Court as well. Now let's just look into that what all changes this recent Amendment Act has done. So first is with regard to formation of Waqf. Previously, even a non-Muslim person can donate his movable or immovable property to Waqf board. But now, according to the recent amendment, only a person who has been practicing Islam for last 5 years, okay, at least 5 years, that person can only donate the Waqf property. And one thing we need to look into is the person is donating his own property, not the other property. Okay, so we need to look into the proper land records as well, ownership rights as well. Then the recent amendment has removed this provision of Waqf by user. But one thing you need to keep in mind is whatever land has been previously declared as Waqf property going by the principle of Waqf by user, that would remain in place. But in future, this principle would not be applied to acquire or to stake claims when it comes to Waqf property. So whatever property have been declared as Waqf property going by this principle of Waqf by user, they would not be affected, but in future the Waqf board cannot use this principle of Waqf by user. Then another issue with the previous act was, let's suppose my father being a Muslim, just taking a hypothetical example, he has written in its will that if I don't have any successful here, then that means I don't have son, then my property would directly be donated to Waqf board. Now previously we only used to look into that whether the family have sons or not. We don't take into account the woman. Okay. So now under this changed act, we also need to look into the inheritance rights of women as well. Okay. It's not like if in a family you don't have sons, you can transfer the property to Waqf board. You also need to look into the woman's inheritance right as well. Okay, so if in the family lineage you have women's, then the women's would be getting the inheritance right. It would not be transferred to Waqf board. Then when it comes to government property, previously also if a government property has been declared as Waqf property, that would cease to have effect right now. Okay, and it would be the district collectors who will be doing this survey that whether the property belongs to government or to Waqf board. Then when you talk about the survey of Waqf property, again this responsibility has been given to district collectors. Then when you talk about the Central Waqf Council and State Waqf Board, we have included 2 non-Muslim members in these institutions. So there is more inclusivity. Then when you talk about the composition of tribunals, which would be looking into the property related matters. So previously we used to have a Muslim law expert, But according to the Amendment Act, we would not be having this person who used to have a expert, who used to have the expertise in Muslim law. Now we will be having the district court judge as the chairman and a joint secondary rank officer at the state level. Other features are, as I told you previously, the tribunal's judgment could not be directly appealed in the High Court. But now this thing has been changed. You will be getting a 90 days window wherein you can challenge the tribunal's judgment in the High Court. Then when you talk about the central government has also been given a lot of powers. It can regulate the registration, publication of accounts of Waqf properties, publication of proceedings of Waqf board, and the central government can also allow the CAG to do the audit of the account of Waqf board to bring in more transparency and accountability when it comes to management of Waqf properties. Then previously, under the Waqf Act of 1995, the Limitation Act was not applicable. Limitation Act basically talks about that once the Waqf board has declared that this property belongs to Waqf board, you don't used to get a window, standard window of 12 years wherein you can challenge the claims of Waqf board when it comes to that property. So now the section 107 of the previous act, which used to exclude the Limitation Act, okay, previously, now this has been repealed. So that means once a Waqf board declares a property to be as Waqf property, I will be getting a 12-year window, okay, wherein I can challenge this thing in front of courts. What all concerns have been highlighted by the experts when it comes to this Amendment Act? So experts are pointing it that it is violation of the religious rights which the religious community get under Article 26 of the Indian Constitution to manage their religious affairs. Then it is leading to increased government control and it might lead to bureaucratic hurdles as well. Then various experts have pointed out that there was not enough consultation done by the stakeholders, Muslim stakeholders, by the central government, and that is the reason we are witnessing protest in state of West Bengal. So government need to look into this particular issue. Then there is potential of increased disputes. Why? Because majorly the power has been given to district collector to look into the ownership of properties. So this might lead to more legal disputes in future. Then another concern is when you look at Article 16, which talks about equality of opportunities when it comes to public employment, therein one exception is there. If we are creating a board or a trust which is going to manage a religious property, therein according to this Article 16, we can have the members belonging to same religious community. So when it comes to managing the religious property of other religions like Hindu religion, therein you don't incorporate Muslim members. So why are we allowing non-Muslim representation when it comes to the Central Waqf Council and State Waqf Board? Okay, so all these concerns, the central government needs to look into. That's all that we need to know with regard to this particular topic. I have framed a practice mains question for you. Do practice this question. With this, let's move on to the next topic. Coming to the second topic, which is dealing with caste system in India. This particular topic is relevant from a GS paper 1 perspective. What has happened recently? Because of the efforts of reformist organization, what we have witnessed is the Rayamangalam temple in Kerala has now allowed people belonging to different castes to come and offer the prayers, which was not allowed previously. In this backdrop, let's just look into the static and the fluid elements when it comes to caste identities in India, because previously UPSC has asked a question with regard to the same. Now, when it comes to caste identities, we say that intercaste marriages is on a rise. But if you look at data given by Human Development Survey, only 5% of the urban India marriages are basically intercaste marriages. So what is the norm? That is endogamous marriage. That is marriage within your own caste. So endogamous marriage is still prevalent when you talk about the Indian society. Then, even though we say that because of education, people have become more literate, okay, so caste-based discrimination are coming down, but that is not right. If you go by the National Crime Records Bureau data, when it comes to atrocities against scheduled caste, we have witnessed an increase of 1.2% in 2021 over 2020. And previously, a Dalit groom was beaten up by the upper caste men. Why? Because he was taking out his wedding procession on a horse in Raigarh, MP. This is the privilege which should be available to only upper caste men, not to Dalit men. Okay, because of these trivial matters, the lower caste have to witness caste-based discrimination and atrocities. Then, when you look at rural area, Khap Panchayat is still holding power. Okay, because of the Khap Panchayat, we witnessed the honor killing of Manoj and Babli in 2007. So, Khap Panchayat continue to reinforce the caste identities in India. Even though we have put in place the Panchayati Raj institution by the 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act, but even today in the rural areas, Khap Panchayat continue to exercise great amount of control. Okay, and that is leading to a rise in honor killings when it comes to India. So this is another reason why the couples are not moving in the direction of doing intercaste marriages. Okay, because still in rural areas there is a threat of Khap Panchayats, which is ultimately leading to honor killing cases. Then, although because of reservations, we say that the lower section, the vulnerable section, they have been able to climb the social ladder. But what we are witnessing is, because of the reservation benefits given to the Dalit community or to ST community, SC community, OBC community, the upper caste like the Jats in Haryana and Patidars in Gujarat, they have now started demanding reservation benefits. So this highlights what? Strengthening of the caste identities in India. Then, when you look at the political parties like the Bahujan Samaj Party, they are, exploiting these caste-based lines just to secure their vote banks. So, when you talk about Bahujan Samaj Party, they have been majorly focusing upon the Dalit vote bank. So, this is not allowing our Indian society to eradicate the caste system, which is still prevalent in Indian society. Then, what we have witnessed is, in the recent year, we have witnessed a rise in caste-based association like Jat Mahasabha, Agarwal Sabha, and they are actually playing a crucial role when it comes to securing the secular interest of their respective caste. Secular interest basically means the economic interest and the political interest of their respective caste mates. Then, if you look at rural India, there you will witness ghettoization. What do we mean by ghettoization? If you look at the housing pattern in rural areas, unlike urban areas, it would not be like here you have Brahmin living here, here you will be witnessing Dalit living here. No, Dalits might be living in the outskirts, okay. Brahmins usually live between, within the village, and Kshatriyas might be living here. So, you will witness a differential pattern when it comes to housing in India, when it comes to rural India. So, ghettoization is still prevalent when you talk about the rural India, although it is not to be found in urban areas. Now, what fluid elements we are witnessing when it comes to caste identities in India? So, first and foremost, because of education, people like Ambedkar, who belong to marginalized community, he ultimately became the architect of the Indian Constitution. So, education has that power that gives you the power to climb the social ladder and contribute efficiently to the Indian society as well as to Indian economy. And what we have witnessed is, because of reservation benefits, we have witnessed an increase in the enrollment of ST students when you talk about the higher education. And this has been validated by the All India Survey of Higher Education Survey of 2020-21. Then, when you talk about urbanization, because of urbanization, we are witnessing that people are not being guided by purity and pollution. Now, when you travel in metro, you don't ask that other person sitting beside you, does he belong to a lower caste or to upper caste? Similarly, in urban areas, when you go to a tea stall or when you go to a Golgappa stall, you don't ask that person who is giving you tea, who is giving you Golgappas, that which caste you belong to. So, urbanization basically is characterized by anonymity. Okay, you are not going to ask the caste of another person. Okay, so this enables people belonging to different castes to come and carry out different kind of occupation, which they are usually not allowed to do in the rural areas. So now when you talk about urban areas, even a person belonging to higher caste who is not allowed to open a vegetable stall in the rural areas, okay, he can come in the urban areas, and as urban areas are characterized by anonymity, he can come here, he can open a vegetable, stall. Then in the current scenario, we are witnessing complex division of labor. Earlier, the work was divided based on caste. But now, because of industrialization, we are witnessing new set of job opportunities, okay, wherein the companies are demanding merit. They are not going to look into your caste certificate, okay. Although for reservation they might be looking, but we are in the current scenario, we are looking towards the merit and the skill set that one holds, okay. So as due to industrialization, we have come up with a lot amount of new job opportunity that is, weakening the caste-based identities with regard to division of labor. Then, because of Sanskritization, wherein the lower caste is, copying the rituals which were done by the upper caste previously. Now, I'll tell you one reality. In rural areas, if you people are aware of this thing, when you look at the marriages of Dalit people, they are not done by the Brahmins there. Okay, in rural India, in my village, it is done by Naun. Okay, it is not done by Brahmins. But nowadays, because of urbanization, if you belong to a Dalit community and you have the money, now the rituals, all the marriage rituals are performed by Brahmins. Okay, so this is what is you can associate with Sanskritization, wherein the lower caste is evaluating the rituals of upper caste and improving their social position. Then intercaste marriages, although I told you that intercaste marriages are not great, okay. Even today, only 5% of the urban marriages are intercaste marriages. But over a period of time, because of education, because of urbanization, we are hopeful that over a period of time, we will witness an increase in intercaste marriages, okay. Then, when you talk about the reservation policies of the government, reservation policies when it comes to education, when it comes to employment, this is enabling the Dalits, the SCs and ST to increase their social position, okay. They can also witness social mobility. Now, in this backdrop, last thing that we need to understand is what all more steps the government need to take so that we can actually eradicate this traditional caste system from India. So, we need to focus upon value-based education. From the childhood only, we need to focus that the younger generation is aware of the values of equality. They have tolerance, so that in future, we do not witness caste-based discrimination. Then, the documentaries and movies like Article 15, which highlighted the stark reality when it comes to rural areas, more such movies should and documentaries should come forward, which should, break the social perception when it comes to caste-based identities which are there. And similarly, social media should also come forward, like the campaign that we have, Jati Nahi Adhikar campaign. Like this, other campaign should also come forward, and we should try to, align the social perception. We need to address the social perception with regard to caste. That is the need of the hour. And in this direction, we should also go towards community dialogues so that there is more trust among the people belonging to different castes, and in future we don't witness caste-based discrimination. And another thing which the government can do is when it comes to giving the reservation benefits, what we are witnessing when it comes to India is reservation benefits are taken away by certain subgroups in the caste, okay, like OBC. So in this backdrop, we need to do subcategorization of the caste so that other caste group within this broader caste group, OBC, ST, SC, all of them could get the benefits of reservation benefits or affirmative actions. That's all that we need to know with regard to this particular topic. I have framed a practice question for you. Do practice this question and let us know your answers in the comment section. With this, let's move on to the simplified section. Beginning with the simplified section, the writer is pointing out that whether the trade war between US and China will be bringing a recession when it comes to global economy or not. This particular topic is relevant from prelims perspective, especially the economy section. Now, USA, which was the major supporter when it comes to free trade and globalization, is taking a back foot. Previously, when it comes to the US tariff rates on the imports coming from different countries, it was majorly between 2% to 3%. But now, the Trump administration has announced on 2nd April that whatever imports would be coming when it comes to different countries, they would have to face a 10% import tariff. Now, this would be impacting the exports when it comes to different countries, especially India, European Union and Vietnam. Now, this has escalated trade war between USA and China. US administration has already given effect to reciprocal tariff when it comes to Chinese goods entering into US economy. In this backdrop, China has also retaliated. It has said that it would be imposing 125% tariff when it comes to imports coming from US economy. Due to this, the writer is pointing out the concern that this trade war might lead to an economic recession when it comes to the global economy. Now, there is a good news. On 9th April, the Trump administration has stated that when it comes to the reciprocal tariff, we would be taking a 90-day pause. Okay, we let the other countries to take the decision. That means they also should lower their tariff rates when it comes to American goods entering their economy. But when it comes to China, they have given effect to reciprocal tariff when it comes to Chinese goods. Now, why US administration is adopting an inward-looking policy? Because this enables us to protect the domestic economy, okay, from the stiff global competition. Now, if you look at to this data point, which was there in today's article only, USA has a trade deficit with major trading partners. If you talk about India, if you talk about China, etc. So, because of the higher per capita income and because of appreciation of dollar, USA have been a major importer of goods coming from different countries. And in this, the writer is pointing that China has also played a very remarkable role. It was China which backed the dollar-denominated assets, stored significant portion of its large export surplus in US treasury bonds, etc. So this led to hyper-globalization. And why US administration is going towards the reciprocal tariff? Because it is trying to protect its steel and automobile industries, okay, because they are the ones who have been impacted by the lower tariff rates, okay, which US administration used to impose previously. So in order to protect its domestic steel and automobile industries, US administration has come up with this whole idea of reciprocal tariff. But one thing which the Trump administration is ignoring is, this would also be increasing the price of consumer goods, which is coming from different countries and entering into US economy. This would be heavily impacting the pockets of the ordinary Americans. And another concern is, even though Trump administration is following an inward-looking or protectionism policy, but will it be effective in raising the production level when it comes to steel and automobile industries? This needs to be looked forward. Now, why China is entering into this trade war? Other countries are planning to reduce their tariff rates because US administration has threatened that we'll be imposing reciprocal tariff. But China is entering into trade war with US. Why? Because China has already been planning for this thing. Okay. Previously, it has taken a lot of steps which had enabled it to reduce its dependence when it comes to US economy. On what basis we are saying this? If you look at China's exports to US, that has witnessed a reduction. In 2006, it was 21%. In 2022, it is merely 16%. Then previously, as US administration has restricted technology transfer to China with regard to microprocessors. So in this backdrop, what step China has taken? It has started focusing upon the science and technology and innovation thing. So it has hugely invested when it comes to R&D expenditure. And to bypass the US tariff, what China has done, it has shifted the production bases to East Asian neighbors like Vietnam, with which it has deep economic networks. Now, the writer is pointing out that what options are there in front of India. Now, when you talk about India, our exports to USA are important in order to get the foreign exchange reserves, okay. But the good news is, if you look at India's exports as a percentage of GDP, it is less as compared to other countries like Mexico, South Korea. India's export to USA, okay, as a percentage of GDP is roughly around 21%. So reciprocal tariff would not be impacting Indian economy that much, as much it is going to impact the other economies like Mexico, Vietnam, South Korea, etc. And another good news is, US administration has not increased the tariff when it comes to pharmaceutical and services sector, in which India is a dominant player. Okay, India is a major exporter of these two things to US economy. But the writer is pointing out that in this entire debate of reciprocal tariff, India is not in a good position. Why? Because even today, if you look at the manufacturing sector, its contribution is quite less. It is roughly 15 to 17% of the GDP. And why is it so? Because of phenomena of missing middle. If you look at the manufacturing sector in India, you will find small enterprises or big enterprises. Because of regulatory cholesterol, we have more than 1,500 laws, okay, regulating the business environment. The small enterprises do not have any incentive to become a mid-size enterprise. So in this backdrop, the writer is pointing out that we need to address this scenario, and in this backdrop, Economic Survey has already pointed out that we need to move in the direction of deregulation. Okay, we need to reduce the compliance cost and we need to reduce the number of laws regulating the business environment in India. And in this backdrop, writer is also pointing out that India needs a clear-cut industrial policy and it needs to increase its investment. Why we are pointing out that this might be heading towards a global recession? Because looking at this trade war, if you have read today's newspaper, one of the major exporter of oil, that is Saudi Arabia, it has taken a decision to increase the oil production and it has taken the decision to reduce the oil prices, which would be coming in effect from May. This is a good news for India because we are one of the third largest consumer of crude oil. Okay, so as the oil prices are coming down and as we are witnessing trade war, the writer is questioning that will it lead to a global recession? Let's look in the upcoming days. That's all that we need to know with regard to this particular topic. Let's move on to the next one. Now, this article has appeared in Indian Express page 8. The writer is pointing out that as the world is witnessing labor crisis, or in the world we are witnessing labor gap, India should emerge as a global talent hub. Now, whatever is relevant, I have highlighted for your reference. We'll be decoding this news in a systematic manner. Now, I've already told you the context. As the world is grappling with labor crisis, we are witnessing a huge labor gap when it comes to the advanced economies. So, in this backdrop, writer is pointing out that it is a huge opportunity for India and it should tap this particular opportunity and it should emerge as a global talent hub. Now, when you talk about the labor crisis in the world, what data figure the writer is pointing out? That when you look at advanced economies, high income economies, it has been projected by various studies that they would be witnessing a labor gap of around 40 to 50 million by 2030. And this is going to increase further to 120 to 160 million by 2040. Why is it so? Because of the aging population. And when it comes to India, we have the demographic window. It is still open when it comes to India. So we need to utilize our demographic dividend. And when you talk about USA and Europe, therein currently we are witnessing 73% of vacancies when it comes to truck drivers, 50% of vacancies when it comes to electrical engineers, nurses, etc. So since the developed economies like USA and Europe and high income countries are witnessing a labor crisis or labor gap, this is the right time that India should emerge as a global talent hub. And what is the significance? Why we should emerge as a global talent hub? Because if you look at the remittances when it comes to the current scenario, they comprise of 3% of the GDP, which is higher than the contribution to any of the export sector when it comes to India's GDP. So if we emerge as a global talent hub, this would lead to a manifold increase in our remittances. This would further give a boost to GDP also. Okay, that has been highlighted by various studies as well, that when we witness 10% rise in remittances, this leads to 3.5% reduction in poverty. But what is the problem? Currently, if you look at the Indian migrant population working in different other countries, they constitute only 1.3% of the total population. This is quite less if you look at other countries like Philippines, Mexico, Bangladesh. So this scenario needs to be improved. So in this backdrop, writer has suggested 7 steps which would enable India to emerge as a global talent hub. So first step is setting up an institutional framework. So in this, we need to be guided by Philippines model. Okay, so under this, we need to strengthen the central department under Ministry of External Affairs to manage the migration process altogether. This central department under the Ministry of External Affairs, what it would be doing? It would be identifying new destination markets wherein we can send the Indian migrant population. We need to negotiate the bilateral agreement. Basically, we need to focus upon mutual recognition agreement of the qualification of our skilled professionals. Okay, we need to look into the supply gap which is there, and accordingly we need to enter into industry collaboration to address this supply demand skill match which is there. Then we need to also put in place migration help desk in the host countries which would provide on ground assistance to our Indian migrant population. Then second step is we need to align the skill set of our workforce with the international standards. Only then the other countries would be ready to employ the Indian migrant population. For this, what we need to do? We need to focus upon foreign language. Okay, only then the Indian migrant population would be able to, communicate with other employees. And we need to make sure that the skills that we are providing to our workforce, it is in align with industrial standards. And for this, we need to look into what is the international skill standard when it comes to different industries. And accordingly, we need to do the, necessary changes in our education curriculum as well. For this, we can enter into joint certification with international institutions as well. Then we need to set up a financing mechanism as well. Now, when the migrant population, they have to acquire the skill set, they have to get the certification, they have to apply for visa. This, increases the financial burden on the Indian migrant population. Roughly, they have to spend around 5 to 10 lakhs, okay, in order to bear all this cost. So in this backdrop, we need to ease the monetary burden, okay, when it comes to cost in acquiring skills and certification. In this, again, we need to be guided by Philippines model, wherein the registered recruitment agencies, they bear the cost of visa, airfares, okay, the cost of acquiring the skills, certification, etc. So this is something that we can adopt in case of India, because how ultimately we will be able to recover this cost? In form of huge remittances. Okay, so this minimal cost could be borne by the government. Okay, then we need to put in place best models of government to government agreement. Again, in this backdrop, we need to be guided by the Philippines model, which have already entered into mutual agreement with 65 countries, wherein it has streamlined its visa process. It has entered into mutual recognition agreements, okay, with regard to the skill set of qualified professional. Mutual recognition agreements basically means whatever skill set an Indian doctor is having, if we enter into mutual recognition agreement with another country, then the doctor can also work as a doctor in another country with which we have MRAs. Okay, so this is something which we need to learn from Philippines, and this is something we also need to put in place. Then we need to establish mobility industry body. What this body would be doing? It would be facilitating government-private collaboration, and this body, specific industry body, it would be looking into that what is the international skill requirement when it comes to specific industry, and accordingly we need to take the steps. Okay, it would be setting the industrial standards for ethical recruitment, and it would be working to align the qualification with the international benchmarks with respect to specific industry. That means what is the skill set which is required when it comes to electronics manufacturing. So accordingly, we will also make the necessary adjustment when it comes to the educational institutions in India, which are providing the skill set when it comes to electronics manufacturing. Okay, then we need to put in place a robust social welfare program, especially for a migrant population. Okay, in order to protect our migrant workers when they are working in other countries. So in this, we can draw the influence from ILO's guideline on migrant welfare. So what we can put in place? So whenever we are entering into agreement, we need to make sure we put in place minimum wages norms, we put in place standardized contract, and we put in place a mechanism through which the migrant population can report workplace abuse and contract violations, and accordingly we can take the necessary actions. Lastly, the writer is pointing out that once this migrant population comes back again to India, Okay, we need to make sure their successful integration when it comes to economy, because this migrant population have the valuable skill set and they also have international experience which could be used to give a boost to GDP when it comes to India. And one more point the writer has pointed out in this article is we need to make sure that when we are sending the Indian migrant population, we are sending them for a shorter period of time, not for a longer period of time. Because when you look at USA, why it is sending the migrants? Because they have this concern that the Indian migrant population would be applying for citizenship of USA. So when we will be sending the Indian migrant population to another country for a short period of time, so this would be welcomed by the other countries as well, because they are already facing a labor gap. The writer has in the end pointed out that all these steps would enable India to emerge as a leading supplier of skilled as well as semi-skilled professionals. And this would lead to a manifold increase in remittances, giving boost to GDP, and this would also be very effective in increasing India's global influence. That's all that we need to know with regard to this particular topic. Let's move on to the next one. Now, recently the European Space Agency is going to launch its biomass mission. This particular topic is relevant from the environment section. Whatever is relevant, I have highlighted. We'll be decoding this news in a simplified manner, systematic manner. Now, as I told you, the European Space Agency is set to launch its biomass mission in the end of this particular month. This satellite, okay, would be placed in sun synchronous orbit. What do we mean by sun synchronous orbit? This satellite would be orbiting the polar north and polar south. And when it comes to the satellites placed in this particular orbit, the satellite would be appearing at a particular time, at a particular location every day. That means if the satellite is there, is over Paris at 12 noon, then on every day it would be there over Paris at 12 noon. This type of satellites enable the researchers to take the image of a particular place at a particular time. This enables them to observe the changes, okay, when it comes to forest, when it comes to biomass, etc. And that is the reason when you talk about biomass mission also, the satellite would be placed in sun synchronous orbit, okay. And these satellites are fixed with the timing of sun in such a way that the satellite can take the images at daytime, okay, when it comes to a particular place. So this enables the researchers to observe the changes at a particular place effectively, at a particular time. Then why this mission is being launched? So according to European Space Agency, if you look at the carbon cycle, forests play a very essential role when it comes to regulating this entire carbon cycle. According to estimate, forests absorb 16 billion metric tons of carbon dioxide per year. And currently, the forests across the world, they are holding 861 gigatons of carbons in soils and vegetation. So, what is the problem? Currently, we don't have any global data set with regard to forest biomass and how the forests are helping in the carbon cycle. So, this is why when you look at biomass mission, the aim of this mission is to map the forest biomass at the global scale, find out how the forests are changing over a period of time, because as I told you, satellite would be placed in sun synchronous orbit, so they would be able to take the pictures at a particular time every day. This would enable them to understand the changes at a particular place, especially the forest. And they would also be trying to understand the role of the forest when it comes to carbon cycle. Now, how this biomass mission is going to track the biomass at the global level? How it is going to monitor the forest? So for this biomass mission would be using a synthetic aperture radar to map the earth, okay. And under this, we are using long wave P band. Why we are using long wave P band? Because it has a higher penetration ability, okay. When you talk about synthetic aperture radar, you can do the mapping. It would not be impacted by weather events, okay. The P band can effectively penetrate into the matter like the ice, like the soil, like the vegetation, etc. Okay, so that is the reason when you talk about the biomass mission, we are using the P band. This would enable them to effectively monitor the changes in the forest and their contribution when it comes to carbon cycle. That's all that we need to know with regard to this particular topic. Let's move on to the next one. As today is the birth anniversary of the architect of the Indian Constitution, that is Baba Saheb Ambedkar, let's just understand certain prelim pointers with regard to Ambedkar ji. This particular topic is relevant from our history perspective. Now, when you talk about Baba Saheb Ambedkar, he was born in 1981 in MP. His father was a Subedar in British Army and he was a follower of Sant Kabir. We need to focus primarily on the contribution of Baba Saheb Ambedkar. So, in 1924, he established the Bahishkrit Hitkarni Sabha. For what purpose? To promote the education and socio-economic upliftment, especially among the marginalized group. And this Bahishkrit Hitkarni Sabha was having the motto of educate, agitate and organize. Then in 1927, he started the Bahishkrit Bharat newspaper. And in 1927, he also led the Mahat Satyagraha. In 1936, he established the Independent Labour Party. For what purpose? Basically to represent the interest of working class, particularly focusing upon the welfare rights of Dalit workers. And later on, he transformed this Independent Labour Party into Scheduled Caste Federation in 1942. He was the one who participated in all the roundtable conferences. I want all of you to let me know in the comment section, when were the 3 roundtable conferences held, the years. Okay. Then in 1932, he signed the Pune Pact with Mahatma Gandhi, which actually abandoned the idea of separate electorate when it comes to the depressed classes. Okay. Idea of separate electorate is the Dalits members would only be voting for the Dalit representatives. So, this idea was dropped after the Pune Pact. Okay. So, we abandoned this idea of separate electorate when it comes to depressed classes. Then he was a chairman of the drafting committee also, and that is the reason we remember him as the architect of the Indian Constitution. In 1947, he became the first law minister when it comes to the first cabinet after independent India, and he resigned from the cabinet because of differences over the Hindu Code bill. In 1956, he converted into Buddhism. He died in 1956. And his death anniversary is observed as Mahaparinirvan Divas across the country. He was awarded with Bharat Ratna also in 1990 posthumously. And some of the famous books of who is he's the author is Annihilation of Caste, Buddha All Karl Marx, The Untouchable, The Rise and Fall of Hindu Women. That's all that we need to know with regard to this particular topic. We have a PYQ with regard to the contribution of Baba Saheb Ambedkar. So do let me know the answer to this question. Let's move on to the last topic of today's analyst. Now, India and African nations are going to conduct a maritime exercise. This particular topic becomes relevant from the prelim perspective, especially the defense and security. Whatever is relevant, I have highlighted. Let's understand the news in a simple manner. Now, India and Africa, key maritime engagement, maritime exercise have started yesterday only. This exercise would be conducted for 6 days, and this is going to be the first multilateral naval exercise with the 10 African nations. This would enable us to strengthen the maritime security, maritime cooperation with the 10 African nations, and it would also enable us to address the regional threats in form of drug trafficking and piracy, which we usually witness around the Horn of Africa. When you talk about the co-host, it would be India and Tanzania. And the participating countries are Comoros, Djibouti, Eritrea, Kenya, Madagascar, Mauritius, Mozambique, Seychelles and South Africa. And this exercise have been started at Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. This multilateral naval exercise is going to support India's Sagar vision as well as Mahasagar initiative, that is growth of all the countries which are there in the Indian Ocean region. Then this particular maritime naval exercise is also coinciding with the Indian Ocean Ship Initiative, wherein INS Sukanya, which is designated at the Indian Ocean Ship Sagar, is currently having 44 naval personnel from different 9 African countries. Okay, and they have also reached this port of Tanzania, wherein this naval exercise is being conducted. When you talk about this Indian Ocean Ship Initiative, these are the participating countries. And what is the purpose of this initiative? This INS Sukanya, which is having 44 naval personals from 9 different African countries, they are going to do the joint surveillance of the exclusive economic zones when it comes to Tanzania, Mozambique, Mauritius and Seychelles. That's all that we need to know in today's Analyst. Quiz would be coming right up next, so don't forget to practice the quiz and check your knowledge. With this, we have come to the end. Keep smiling, keep learning.